I wanted to start with a little bit with the Depression,
All right.
particularly the early 30s, like around 32, 33.
Right.
How did it affect you personally and your family?
Well, first of all, I graduated from Lowell High School December of 1931, and I should have gone on to Cal right away, but because of the Depression, I had to stay out 1 year and help at my dad's store. So all of 32, I worked in the store, then entered Cal in the spring of 33. And the interesting thing is, when I went to work out in the country in 33 as a freshman, the wages was 12.5 cents an hour.
What kind of, do you remember first hearing about they're creating an island in the bay, and that they were going to create a brand new island off of Yerba Buena Shoals? And
Oh yes, we naturally, it came out in the papers, and we read all about it, and we anticipated its coming.
what was the feeling of the time of yours and your family about a fair, the idea of a fair, and
Well, we look forward to it. For one thing, you see, my dad always used to talk about the 1915 Panama Pacific Exposition. During our childhood, that's all we heard, the 1915 fair. And now we're going to have a fair of our own.
do you remember the China Clipper at all?
Oh, yes, of course, didn't ride on it, but we used to see it flying, or see pictures of it flying, newsreel.
Did you have any sense of wanting to be involved with flying, or what did those big boats?
Well, as a boy, as a youth, my hobbies were planes. World War I, the German Fokkers and the French Spad and the Newports. I used to draw pictures and have model planes, so flying was always in my blood, and I ended up by flying 250,000 miles for the YMCA as a volunteer.
Well, what was the first planes you remember seeing out in the bay?
I guess in the bay, well, Curtiss Wright, some of those early biplanes. I think you saw those first. Later you saw other planes like the DC-3s. But early on it was these biplanes, not the monoplanes.
Do you remember the first time you saw those big?
You mean the large planes? Oh yes, they had Mills Field, out in the northern part of San Francisco, right by the bay, and you could see the planes there. And actually, being a plane enthusiast, I used to go to see them, and then later on to the other, where San Francisco Airport became an airport later. Yes.
Okay, tell me about the sense of the Japanese pavilion. Do you remember anything about the arrival of the Japanese pavilion? I heard that it came on a ship, and
naturally came on all the parts were assembled in Japan first, and then they put it together. They had craftsmen from Japan, and they put it together right on the island. And of course, this is jumping a little bit, but it was sad that at the very end they couldn't move it, so they had to burn it down.
Well, do you remember reading or hearing about the fact that Japan was going to be in the fair? And do you remember any anticipation?
Oh, yes, we had heard. In fact, there was a constant barrage of news in the paper about the coming fair. And so naturally, being we were right in the middle of Nihon Machi, or Japantown, we anticipated the coming of the Japan Pavilion.
Well, tell me more about what people were saying or thinking about having a Japan Pavilion.
Well, I guess like any of us, you look forward to something that is historical, something that would be of interest, something that would be interesting. And so I think all of us anticipated not only the coming of the fair, but specifically the coming of the Japanese Pavilion, because we knew that there would be many artists coming from Japan, the Takarazuka Ballet from Kobe, the puppet people, the doll people. So we anticipated their coming a great deal.
Why do you think this was important for people in Japantown?
Well, again, you get away from your mundane, everyday life. You have something to look forward to. something outside of your daily routine, and so you look forward to it.
Well, tell me tell me how you happen to be making movies at the fair. How did that come about?
Well, movies, I started making movies over 50 years ago in August of 1936 when I was a senior at UC Berkeley. And how did that happen? Well, in May of 1936, on May the 11th, I lost my best friend. And 2 months later, I was at a church meeting, and a movie was shown, showing my best friend and I walking together at a conference. And I said, movies are a wonderful thing. And I went out and bought the cheapest Eastman camera, which at that time was $30, a lot of money when bread was 10 cents a loaf. And that's how I started taking movies in August of 1936.
Well, tell me about taking movies at the fair.
Well, you know, the fair was right across the bay there. And so during 39 and 40, we must have gone to the fair a number of times. And of course, since the movie was a hobby, well, you'd carry a camera with you, and here is that camera. It's a 1940 Bell & Howell. And so I carried this camera, and I had a case that it fitted in, and so I took a lot of footage, although films were expensive. And by the way, people thought that you didn't have color, but color came out in 1937. And so by 1939-40, we had color films, 8 millimeter. And so we were able to take color pictures of the fair. And
what were some of the things you most enjoyed filming?
of course, Japan Pavilion, and I guess, you might, I don't know if you see it in this picture, but the stunt flyer, that stunt flying was absolutely out of this world. He was right over our head, just right above us, and right over the water, and doing all that stunt. That was quite a thing. Of course, Gateway, that was always a fun place to be, where Sally Rand and her nude ranch. And then, of course, they had the nude shows, but I never went into them, of course. And admission was 10 cents, if you notice. 10 cents. Then I got on top of the giant crane and went to the top and took a picture of the top.
All right.
Okay. You're telling us about filming at the fair, some of the things you were enjoying filming, particularly.
Right.
And the giant crane.
Seen Sally Rand. And
Sally Rand and the Gateway and Japan Pavilion, of course. Oh, I think I probably gonna. I don't know if you'll have it in the this showing, but Japan Day Parade, and I'll have to tell you a very interesting incident happened. I showed the movie a month ago in Salt Lake City at a church, and in this Japan Day Parade, one young lady comes out in the parade with a kimono on. The first one coming out, I often said, I wonder who she is. I wonder if I'll ever see her again. At this church, a lady stands up and says, that's me. I was 14 years old then. And so I told everybody, I said, now you know how old she is 50 years later.
Why did you feel that the Japan days and the parades had any effect on the way people perceive Japan here in the States?
Well, at that time, let's see, 1939-40, war clouds were gathering. However, I think with the fair, people forgot about the war or the imminence of war. Of course, we didn't know Pearl Harbor was coming, but with all that Shanghai incident and the Manchurian incident, there was animosity toward the Japanese. But during the fair, as I remember correctly, people forgot about all that. And I thought the fair was a nice thing to have at that time.
Mm-hmm. I noticed in your footage there's a lot of material on the cavalcade.
Yes.
Why did you film so much of the cavalcade?
Well, gee, with video you can do a better job. You can get sound, you know. But it was so interesting. They had 2 years in a row. One was the Cavalcade of the Golden West, and the other one was the Cavalcade of America. And where would you see steam engines actually coming onto the scene, cattle crossing the stage, the old fire engine? It was just a spectacular showing, and I'm sorry they don't have it today. It was just a terrific program.
What do you remember about the Japanese pavilion itself? Like, what would a typical visit for you be?
Well, first of all, the architecture I thought was very well done. And then the interior, of course, you had the silk girls showing silkworm culture. And then they had the tea room and kimono-clad hostesses. And then, of course, as you exited from the, went out from the pavilion, there was that tempura house run by former sumotori or sumo wrestlers, big husky fellas. And then, of course, another interesting part was the cormorant fishing that they had right in the pond there. It was during the daytime, of course they usually have at night, but they had the fire burning to attract the fish, and they had the cormorants diving in to get, I thought it was very interesting, very well done.
What did your family think of all this filming that you were doing?
Well, they tolerated it. I was always running around, I got to get that, I got to get that, you know.
How did they feel when you were taking pictures of them?
Well, I think they didn't mind too much.
How do they react to seeing their pictures years later at the fair?
Well, first of all, we haven't looked at it very much. You know how it is. You have so much film to look at that you don't get back to it. And now, lately, I'm showing it to senior citizens groups because it's 50 years exactly. And on February 18th this year, the fair opened on February 18th of '39. I was showing the picture to the Methodist Church seniors. And then I wore this shirt that I wore 50 years ago when after all, the fair was to celebrate the completion of the Bay Bridge and the Golden Gate Bridge. And so in '37 May, when the Golden Gate Bridge opened, everybody in town went crazy. They wore cowboy shirts, cowboy hats, neckerchiefs, and Levi's. And this is the original shirt. Nicely just now. You'll see.
And it'll look good. It'll work
Yeah.
just fine. But you might repeat some of that about
I
the
see.
excitement.
Yes.
Well, in the film
Yeah.
that you took, there's actually a picture of you. And before, I guess, I don't know when it is, but you're wearing that shirt.
I see.
What was the connection with you wearing that shirt in the film?
Well, you see, during the fair, we did many things that normal people don't do. In the excitement and the festivity of the occasion. And so I probably was wearing it on one of the days. And even my dad, as old he was, as he was, wore a cowboy hat and a neckerchief. I remember, not a shirt though. But this is the original shirt made by Levi Strauss. And it's been hanging in my closet ever since then, by the way, 50 years.
Did the fair have an effect on business?
Oh yes, it was good for business, I think, for everyone. Specifically for our store, I think it was very good. In fact, we just had a meeting of some of our children, and we were talking about the history of the store. And I told them how after the Depression, when the fair came, it pulled us out of debt.
How so?
Pardon?
How did it pull you out of debt?
Well, because business was very good. People from all over the West, California, would come to Japantown, and we sold fair souvenirs, by the way, and they just sold like hotcakes.
What kind of souvenirs did you sell?
Oh, pillows and little medallions and banners. We had a whole counter full of all kinds of knickknacks, souvenirs of the fair, pictures, albums.
What do you think was some of the most popular?
Well, it's hard to remember right now, but I think everything sold. Everything.
Now, having a whole Japanese Day and Japanese Pavilion and so forth, did that have any kind of an effect on unifying the Japanese American community? Did it?
Well, I guess you would say it helped unify the community in the sense that they had to plan together for Japan Day. They had to plan the floats and all the marching bands, the girls in kimonos. It was quite a parade. And so it took a lot of legwork and planning, and naturally it brought the people together in planning.
And what was the relationship between the Japanese Americans and the Japanese who had brought the pavilion?
Oh, excellent. There were guests, you see, and I think people feted them and treated them royally, and I think they enjoyed coming to America. It was their first visit for many of the artisans coming, you see.
Now, what about the speeches? I noticed I think the Japanese consul gave a speech on one of the
Yes.
Japan days. Do you remember anything about what they were talking about or what the feeling was? At the
Well, I think you can almost say what they would say or what they did say about peace between Japan and America and goodwill. I think that's the usual theme that ambassadors or consul generals would dwell on. And I think, I mean, I remember the exact speech, but I can almost say that that's what the theme was.
And what was the attitude among the Japanese American community towards Japan's increasing militarism and what it was doing in the Pacific?
First of all, I think we're rather far away from all that was taking place in Asia, but there was a feeling of apprehension. We just felt a little leery about the things going on over there and the aggression by the Japanese militarists. I think there was a certain sense of fear of the future.
Mm-hmm. What were you afraid might happen? Or
Well, what happened? The blow-up in the Pacific, that explosion. Of course, we didn't know about Pearl Harbor coming, but we always felt very uneasy that something drastic might happen, and something drastic did happen in Pearl Harbor.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How about specifically the Japanese into China? And, for example, the Chinese pavilion at the fair
Yes.
was put together by Chinese merchants
Yes.
in San Francisco.
Yes.
Is there an awareness of that?
No, there were no animosities between the Chinese people there in San Francisco locally and with us. Nothing to speak of, really.
Mm-hmm. One more thing, can you happen to remember anything particularly funny or awkward that happened to you while you were filming?
Filming? I guess it's pretty hard to say now, offhand. Nothing really, nothing strange happened. I think everything went pretty well. And no embarrassing moments. And after all, it was not like me taking pictures secretly behind barbed wires. It was perfectly legal and to take pictures at the fair. And everybody was taking pictures, not movie so much. Most of the people taking stills. Movie taking was rather a rarity in those days, not like video today. And so, nothing.
Well, you ready to change?
I'll reload.
Yeah.